welcome to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. I'm Marshall Bennett. I'm here with the three best friends there ever was. Today, we have Joe Lego on our podcast. He's had about 10 years of experience in the strength conditioning realm. He is the host of the Strength Coach Experience podcast, which is about the journey of those in the sports science field. He's also the owner of Controlled Madness and Human Performance. But, better yet to tell us more about yourself, Joe. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks for having me on. I truly appreciate it and happy to be here. Basically, I started off as an athlete, played basketball in junior college. That kind of morphed into wasn't going to make the NBA, so I started getting involved in fitness. I went to Long Island University in Brooklyn, and there I met a strength coach who kind of, saw me in class and different exercise stuff. So I started doing some strength and conditioning stuff with him, some volunteer work. Fast forward. I started doing volunteer stuff at different colleges, got an opportunity to go to TCU, and eventually I was the graduate assistant at LIU for baseball and softball. After that, I got a job with the New York Mets. I spent 3 years in the minor leagues working with minor league teams and the big leagues. After I got out of there, I worked at various performance places, and then I ended up starting my own business in Brooklyn throughout the city, training younger athletes and just like the general population. And then the pandemic hit, so we had to change a little bit. So now I do most of my stuff online, and I started the podcast about 6 months ago, kind of trying to do the same things you guys are doing, just get the knowledge out there and just a place where people can kind of talk and kind of restructure that communication we're all used to having when we used to work hand in hand with each other.
Right. I mean, I think that's huge. Obviously, Joe, we haven't really met in person or anything. We just met through Instagram. Entwined with your network and just see where we can go from there is awesome. I think the one thing that you touched on that we really want to dive in on with you on this podcast is the virtual training aspect of things. Like, obviously, you mentioned, the pandemic hit everybody in a lot of different ways, and you kind of took it and rolled with it in a different direction into the virtual training side of things. So if you want to just kind of dive in and kind of talk about, what led you into that direction and why you went to virtual.
Sure. So basically, after everything happened, especially in New York, everything started closing really fast. It was like people were freaking out for about 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden they just shut everything down. So there was kind of about a month or two there where nobody really knew what was going to go on. Luckily for me, I was training clients at the time that owned a house in Florida. So I went to Florida with them, actually, and I was able to stay there for a while. But while I was down there, a number of people that I trained, because I didn't, really plan on doing a lot of virtual stuff, they reached out to me and they're like, hey, do you do stuff online? Athletes and things like that. So I really started thinking about it, and I just started actually just doing it kind of off the cuff, if you will, with, athletes and clients that I have. And over time, I just kind of got better and better at it. And one of the things that it wasn't really a hard transition, but one of the things, or the biggest obstacle, is the cueing stuff. When you're, as you guys know, when you're in front of an athlete, when you're in front of a client, you're able to point at things on the ground, or sometimes, touch muscles or do different things to get them to do what you want them to do. And one of the things in virtual training, you can't do that. So initially, the first, couple weeks or the first couple months, it was just gaining that cueing and really being able to kind of devise a plan to explain, lunges and different things with my clients. The hard stuff is absolutely, you can't really have kids do too much stuff with max effort if you're there, obviously because of safety. But I think it's a good opportunity for people to, really learn how to coach and make sure your cues are there. But like I said, the transition it just kind of happened. And luckily I was able to jump out in front of it and, be relatively successful to this point.
What do you think is the biggest transition from going virtual to hands-on coaching? I know you kind of mentioned you kind of just jumped in. It was kind of, I'm sure you've made a lot of tweaks on it as it goes, but what do you think is the biggest, difference of virtual? I know you kind of hit on it with the cues, but beyond just the cues.
Sure. I think for me, the biggest thing is people leaving, kids leaving, clients going elsewhere, because one of the things is if you train clients that are in, say they're in a different state or they're in a different place where the kind of the restrictions aren't that crazy, they're going to want that in-person facility. They're going to want a coach to be hands-on. And I don't think whether it's, they really like you or anything against you, but if that time comes where they're able to go to somebody else who has a reputable reputation to help them with what they want to do, they're going to go there. In my experience, I've lost a few with that. I think the other thing is just because we're online and we don't know where the seasons are going, when they're going to start, or kind of what that timeline of sport that we're used to. I think it's just hard to program because you don't know what's going to happen. You know, you could have a kid in a hypertrophy phase, let's say, and all of a sudden his travel ball team or high school will call and say, hey, we're playing in 2 weeks. And now we have to kind of ramp stuff up to get them ready, but also we want to watch out for the injuries and stuff. So I would say probably the hardest part is, you know, just losing people that you're not able to be in front of. And the second part would be just our programs aren't able to follow kind of that in-season, off-season type of cycle that we're used to. And we always have to kind of, you know, be ready for a constant change on the whim because the kids aren't going to not play. I mean, they're all chomping at the bit to get in there if they haven't started already.
I could imagine. I mean, even just thinking about in person at the university level, just how much, even like personally, how my programs or how like my sessions would change even within like 5 minutes before they started. I can only imagine just how much that kind of translates into virtual, where it's like maybe you call up someone one day and they're like, oh, well, this is kind of, you know, hurting a little bit, or this or that is bugging me. Didn't get much sleep last night. And it's like having to kind of restructure something on the fly without actually being able to see it, I'm sure is a completely different monster in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the biggest thing. And just like you mentioned, you know, setting that tone and knowing what the athletes are going to do kind of by their body language and when they walk in is gone. You know, and at least in the in-person stuff, if they walk in, you can tell they're tired. Or you have rumors of, you know, maybe they went out. You know, I'm not saying strength coaches out there, you know, your athletes, they shouldn't go out. They should all stay in. But, you know, if you see those things, we're able to on the fly change their programs, and we're able to offer the best kind of product for them at the time. But yeah, when you sign online, it's basically, hey, I slept like garbage, and this is what we have, right? And if we have anything planned, it's a lot harder to get things done. And then one of the other things I think too is if kids don't have access to the same equipment that they had when we were at school or in the gyms we were at, you know, now we're trying to explain to them how to, you know, create maximum output with a 20-pound dumbbell and a BOSU ball.
That's what my next question was going to be. I was going to say, how do you kind of communicate with your clients right off first? Can you tell me what kind of equipment you have? Do they send you videos? How do you kind of go with that communication with that athlete or your client?
I started using the video stuff. I wasn't really a big, you know, workout stuff. I'm still, you know, building the stuff, but just a lot of text messages. And I like to do it in FaceTime, or I like to try to do it on Zoom. Obviously, FaceTime is easier because they have their phones on them all the time. In Zoom, we got to, you know, it's a little bit more difficult. But in order to do that, the communication has to, you know, ramp up where, you know, with the text messages, you have to kind of, I have a lot more phone conversations with kids. And, you know, hopefully that trust factor that we've created while I was with them lasts, you know, kind of over this break, because we, you know, I try to emphasize, you need to tell me everything that's going on. You know, I can't see it. I only get what, you know, you're telling me. I can't see you. I can't analyze body language. So a lot more conversations and a lot more almost reassurance, or sometimes, you know, with athletes, we want to kind of keep a little bit of that, you know, that fence between professional and, you know, coaching and athlete. But in this situation, sometimes you'll dive a little bit deeper just because you want that trust factor to be there when they're not seeing you, so that when it comes to their program, they'll say, hey, coach, I threw a bullpen yesterday. My shoulder hurts, you know, or I did something and it doesn't feel right, because they're fighting that battle between, I want to play right now and I want to be ready, because we have that upside down hourglass where the sand's ticking out, because they might be a junior in high school, or, you know, they might be a senior in college, and they're all fearing that they're not going to play anymore, or they're not going to be ready. And, you know, that limited time kind of puts a burden on everything.
That's what I kind of going into or piggybacking off of that. How would you say, kind of, you touched on it a little bit, but how would you say you kind of like relationships with your athletes has kind of changed going from in-person to virtual? Because I know you like this amount of stress on the communication factor has to just go through the roof. So it's like, would you say maybe it's a little bit easier, it builds a better relationship maybe because you're communicating so much and maybe a little bit more often than, say, if you were in person and you would be able to kind of have a little bit more of a physical cue type deal, or be able to touch the muscles or something, just being able to talk through everything that they're doing and everything that they're going to do in their training, do you think that kind of helps the relationship building to be able to have a higher level of confidence or a higher level of communication, even though it's kind of like you don't have any other option?
Absolutely. I think that by talking on the phone and you're able to spend more time, agreeing with what you said. One thing for me though, is a lot of them, that kind of line where you meet them in the gym and you work out with them and then they text you to confirm or if anything happens. That was all that was there. Now, I don't know if it's a drawback, but they call you for everything. Just in my experience, a lot of the kids I have, they call me all the time, nonstop, a lot. So for me, yes, I like the communication, but I don't like the kind of, sometimes it opens the floodgates to let me call you every single time something happened. And I'm not trying not to be cynical, but a lot of these kids, if they jam their finger, they'll call you and say, hey, look, I threw a baseball yesterday and it doesn't feel right. And we have to sit there for 10 minutes, kind of distinguishing what a jammed finger is. So not to be, on the negative, but I think it has become easier on the positive notes. It has gave me closer to my athletes. It has helped me with a lot of stuff. It has got me to get more trust in them. And to come back to what I said, and to make it a positive, when they start to call you with those everyday problems or certain things that are away from the sport, that is, again, going to help our relationship building. So, not a lot of the call, some of the calls are a little crazy, but for the most part, when they start talking to you about things going on in their life that are outside the weight room, I think that it truly helps with relationship building.
Absolutely. Still keeping that kind of that coach athlete fence up, like you said, but yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would think, if I was an athlete, just talking to a coach one-on-one, maybe in the weight room, you might always have that kind of imaginary fence, but you call your coach and you talk to him on the phone, you sometimes, not necessarily you forget, but it's like you just think you're talking to another person on the phone. You're not really realizing it's your coach. He might open up a little more, rather than if we had the entire team, I have his teammates around, he might not open up or just tell you. So I also feel like it could possibly lead into that better communication.
Yeah,
I kind of like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It does definitely increase the communication, and I think I haven't done it yet, but I'd be anxious to see when I get to see them again, how that communication is going to change and kind of how the cueing changes, and just the understanding of each other. I think it's going to make the relationship a lot stronger once we get back into a weight room.
I mean, I think on like the private sector side of things, I mean, Joe, you can give me your thoughts on this as well, but like I see the relationship aspect on our side on the private sector being a lot different than when we were in college. Like when I was in college, it was like there's a fine line. You stay on this side of the line, they stay on this side of the line. We never go across it. But now it's like, I've had some pretty good relationships with some of the athletes that I'm working with right now on the private side of things, just because it's a lot more one-on-ones, one-on-threes, where you get to learn more about their actual lives and like their wives and what's going on with their life and anything along those lines. Is my video not going through?
No, your face is frozen on mine, and like it cut out halfway through your point, so I wasn't sure if you were done yet.
Yeah, really you cut out. Yeah, and your face freezes, gets me really angry. It makes me want to punch you in the face. What's up? Is Dallas doing? I'm not. Yeah, is Texas going through another storm or something? You guys losing Wi-Fi now? Lost water and everything.
Down here.
So this is why you suck at Fortnite. Your Wi-Fi is not reliable. It makes sense now. Okay, I understand. I understand why I have to carry the team.
So my biggest question is like program design wise, do you stay away from like any kind of max effort stuff? Do you stay towards like like a 3+, or like kind of program design wise, like what do you look at since you're not there for the safety aspect of those lifts?
Yeah, of course. No max effort. I'm just a background. I'm a big Louie Simmions person, in season over speed eccentrics, lifting heavy, 95% max and stuff, paired with a jump and things like that. That's how I do my in-season stuff. In relation to that, exactly. No, I don't have the max effort. It's a lot more dynamic stuff, lighter weights with, fast reps and then kind of potentiating that with jumps and things like that. But yeah, staying away from those heavy lifts. Also, going back and just, looking at each athlete and just making sure what they're really good at and what they're not good at and the things that they were shaky on, and making sure that the things that I program in there that are going to be intense or heavy are all based on patterns that they're able to, do with no issues, or at least I know that they can do with any issues when I was there.
Gotcha. What do you think?
I mean, you guys are just super excited since he's a big Louie guy now.
Yeah, not all Louie, but Wi-Fi. So, fun fact about Marshall, Joe, he didn't know what a combating resistance was, so me and Sam had to tell him what it was. This was
years ago. I mean, you act like this was
listen, I'll be the first. I learned all about him. I learned all about Louie Simmions only like 5 years ago. And before that, I was like, oh God, he's a powerlift person. And then I started, I had a long commute to work and I started listening to all his podcasts. And then I started listening, the overspeed stuff. So I use all of his overspeed stuff in season. And the reverse hyper is my favorite machine on the face of the earth because I had back problems. So I'm biased.
Well, Melo's 45, and he found out that when he was 40.
Hey, it's better late than never.
I mean, I already like you better than Marshall since you like reverse hypers. So.
Why doesn't he like reverse hypers?
Because I don't know.
I do like reverse hypers. I hate Aaron.
You don't like RPR?
Any podcast.
You don't like RPR? You said the chiropractor does it better. You just
he doesn't like back squats.
You're a fluff guy.
Aaron, you sound like I go to a friend all the time. I literally went once when my hip went out, and that was it. That was the only time I've ever been. And you weren't even in Iowa at that time, so you could just STFO.
Well, so Joe, you were talking about, kind of a Louie guy, going with the overspeed and everything like that. I had tried, I guess, kind of to do a little bit more of a dynamic effort bench press day with some of my pitchers at one point at my last job, and I thought, because I tried to kind of put the, connect the dots of like, well, what is the action actually going on with their pitching mechanics and everything like that. I thought kind of being able to have that max contraction with max relaxation really fast, I thought that would be able to translate a little bit over into their kind of performance on the mound. I don't know if you have tried something similar like that with having like kind of that Louie background-ish, or having more of like the I know a lot of baseball guys, especially pitchers, don't really like to bench in any capacity. I've had tons of guys who would rather just use dumbbells or something like that, or go floor press or whatever. Have you tried to implement anything kind of along those lines?
I do use the dynamic stuff. I do not use barbells. I do like the neutral grip ones, but I didn't have those. I'll just touch on, not with my athletes, but in college, when I train teams and things with a lot of the Louie Simmions stuff, I was predominantly use dumbbells, but I would always use the same, I would take the same percentages almost, and I would just make sure the movements were quick. One of the things I realized at work too is to talk to the guys and realize what they liked, because, we used a lot of sumo deadlifts. We didn't use a lot of heavy back squats unless I had guys that didn't like deadlifts, because I didn't want to put kids in a position where, hey, we're going to max out on squats and they don't like to squat. So what I found that worked most successfully was to use the things that Louie uses, the bands and the different things and the weights, but to kind of tailor it to what your athlete liked, depending on the movements. I didn't use bench press. I don't like barbell bench press for pitchers, just because, not that it's bad. I don't believe in any exercise is bad as long as you have your explanation and there's stuff to back it up. But it was more of, it has a bad name, right? It's like a barbell shoulder press, right? If a coach walks in, I have to explain that. And then if a kid goes on the mound and blows out his UCL, then they're going to look at my program and be like, ha, look, you did, barbell bench press. So not that I don't like it. It's just that it was one of those things where I knew coaches would cause a fuss, but I would still try to use all the major movements and, using dumbbells. I had the pleasure of having Kaiser machines, so we used a lot of those things. But yeah, just really making sure I hit those markers and the percentages and the times and the speeds, but trying to implement the movements with Louie as best as I could, minus using the barbell.
I gotcha.
See, Mello, West Side's the way to go, man. I don't know what you have against that, you know.
Did you watch? Wait, have him watch the movie. You'll fall right in love if you watch West Side vs. the World.
Yeah, I've only watched it 100 times, Marshall. So
I'm so mad they took it off of Netflix. It was my go-to movie.
Oh yeah. I was lucky. I ended up when it first came out. I bought it on Amazon Prime for like the $10. So this last meet with my buddies, we watched it while we were fucking bloating up. So we were getting hyped, watching Louie before the meet.
They should make a series out of him. He's my favorite. Watching him talk, it's great. The stuff that he says. It's just, what do we do to power clean? We power clean. What do we do to get better at power cleans? We power clean.
Well, and all the just like the background stories with like Chuck V and those guys just going nuts, like when they get the bands out, or like or if someone got hurt, they're like, it doesn't matter, we're still gonna train or something.
Oh, the part with the cast, the part with the cast, he had a hole in his throat. I'm like, you went to the gym? And they're like, yeah, that's what happened. I was like, this is wild.
Going straight from the hospital.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, so I met Louie when we went to the Arnold Classic a couple of years ago, and like he sat and talked to us for like 20 minutes. So I'm sure and it was like open, so like everybody was going throughout the day. So I'm sure he talked to a lot of people that day, but like he's just like a genuine guy. Like everything what he says, like he would tell everybody. Like we were talking, and I was like, Louie, I love the gym. It's amazing. He's like, you know what? I tell people this. He's like, it's just 4 walls. It's the people inside will make it. So like that was kind of cool for me to meet him. And then it was kind of below my mind what like I was tall. I'm 5'9.5", and he was like up to my shoulders. He's like 5'5". I didn't think that. But.
Yeah, I know some people that met him too, and they said he's awesome. He's just a regular guy. Yeah, he's 5'5" because he talks about it in his. He says it all. Yeah, he was like, you have to when he talks about like your sport picks you, and he was like, I liked basketball, but I'm 5'5", so I use my brain. Like or he talked about baseball. That's right. He was really good at baseball, and he almost got like drafted, and then he quit because he's 5'5".
See, that goes back to me. If I could, I'll just have monolifts and reverse hypers. That's all I would have in my weight room.
Yeah,
but I guess that's frowned upon against people, I guess.
I just wouldn't trust 30 baseball players in college to deal with a monolift. They'd kill each other. I'd have to have like a tape around it and like directions or something, and they'd have to like call me over when they're going to use it.
The sickest gym. I told this to Sam, and Marshall probably forgot because I said monolift. He probably doesn't know what a monolift. But when I was an intern at University of Buffalo, they had they had 2 monolifts in the Olympic side. There would never be a better weight room than that one, in my opinion. 2 monolifts in the college setting. That's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know of anybody that has a monolift besides that.
Well, I think Nate Harvey designed that entire Olympic side. So when he was at Buffalo.
Yeah, I heard their stuff's nice up there. I've never been there. It's 8 hours for me.
Mello, you ever use a monolift?
No, Aaron.
Hey, in his defense, I've never used one either, but I've stood next to him.
That's all that matters. You touch one.
Exactly. I bought somebody once. We went to a conference and they had one, and the guy was like a trainer, so he had no idea about any of this stuff. And I'm not even joking. We were at Hybrid Strength in Long Island, and the guy was running around the gym like playing with the monolifts and like pressing button. And he's older than me, and I'm like, dude, you got to stop. Like you're like a child in a Toys R Us. And he's like releasing the pressure and like moving the stuff around. I'm like, you got to stop playing with things. Like this guy's going to kill you if you break this.
Well, because that was Aaron and my running joke when we worked with Marshall in Iowa. It was always just asking the head guy when we were going to get our monolift in. When are we going to get the monolift, coach?
Oh, the reverse hyper.
I used to have a friend at Iowa State. I went to school with him. Now he's at Delaware State, I think.
Yeah, we were at William Penn University.
Okay.
So a NAIA school, kind of south central Iowa.
Okay.
When was he at Iowa State? Because I had Couple buddies.
Oh man, I think he was there from like 2011 to like 2000 and maybe 15, 16, I think.
The one buddy who I was a GO with, he was with the old staff. He was the assistant there. Then one of the guys who I was another GA, he was an intern there for the past, I think, 2 years ago.
Okay.
So it would have been past them.
Yeah. No, he was there because I went to school with him in like 2011, and then he went to Springfield College and he did football as a GA, and then he went to Iowa State. Now he's at Delaware State.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Damn.
What do you got to say about this powerlifting, Mel? I know you're kind of confused. You don't really know what to talk to. We went on a little route of Louie Simmions. You're like, what the fuck are these guys talking about?
No.
Hey, he's the best.
Chains, overspeed eccentrics, basketball, wide stance, sumo, deadlift. What? We trap bar here at Texas. I don't know where the barbell is. We are in trap bar.
Hey, Zach the Chant uses West Side. He's right over at TCU.
Yeah, you got something to say about him, Mello?
He's my boy. He's the best.
Oh, I almost feel like it's like just talking shit to Marshall when he's like not here because he's so choppy. He almost can't even say.
I know he can't defend himself. Wi-Fi.
You guys really? I'm like over here, like
it's bad.
Saying my points, yelling, bad. And like nothing's happening.
It's atrocious. Like you haven't talked in like 5 minutes.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, I'm lying, hello.
I'm just gonna call you and you just put me on speakerphone on your end, and then you guys will be able to hear me.
You're blocked on my phone, by the way. All right, so I'll go ahead.
Honestly, the worst.
I actually have a question. I actually have a question since we kind of went on the highway of Louie Simmions. So you kind of mentioned Zach Chant of being, your guy. Who has been like kind of mentors and, the reason for you to get into the realm of strength conditioning?
Well, it kind of happened out of nowhere. Like I said, I played basketball in junior college. I got hurt. Actually trap bar deadlifting in high school. And I pinched my sciatic nerve. I was 16 years old and I heard a pop and I walked around with leg and nerve pain for 4 months and I had no idea what was going on. And at 16 years old, you don't stretch or do anything. You just power through. And then I went to college, nothing crazy, but I went to JUCO and I tore my groin up. And when I was there, nobody really knew what to do. Everybody kind of lifted their hands. They're like, do what you can do. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. You're supposed to have some stuff figured out. So when I got out of, junior college, like I said, I worked at gyms since I was 15 years old and I was always into training and stuff like that. And I had some clients, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, oh, you work out? Great. Here's some stuff to do. So anyway, when I graduated from junior college and I had to make a decision, I looked up athletic training, believe it or not, and I thought athletic trainers trained athletes. So I applied for an athletic training position at LIU in Brooklyn. I had a lot of friends that lived in the city. It was relatively close, and everybody that I went to school with went upstate. And I'm not a big freezing cold person. I don't like winter and snow. So I was like, why would I go any further upstate and freeze? So I came down to the city and I started taking some classes, and we had a class called SPF 101, and it was taught by a soccer coach and our strength coach at the time, where we went through different ways to train, different methods, different ways to do dynamic warm-ups, just a full-on, not really difficult class, but just going over how you create angles or jumps or what are good for certain things, almost like exercise prescription, but for athletes. It was in a gym. We would try different workouts. We would do different things. So anyway, when I was there, I started doing very well in the class, and I actually met the strength coach, and I did good in the class. I did good on all the tests, whatever. And I actually left LIU for a semester. That's when I met my friend that was at Iowa State at Queens College together. But when I returned, I had to take about a year later, I had to take the second part of that class, and those two same teachers were teaching it. And by that time, I had got a little bit more understanding of strength conditioning. And when I went back into the class after about the first week, they were like, you don't need to be in this class. You know what's going on. You know more than everybody that's in here just from your background. What if you were to, instead of coming here and almost, wasting your time, not bashing college classes, but why don't you go and do some volunteer work with the strength conditioning coach? So instead of going to class, I ended up going and working with that strength coach and did some stuff with him, but I really wasn't sold on strength conditioning, right? I was taking classes for athletic training and everything else, and everything was good. And he kept kind of hounding me for a little while. And so eventually, I said, okay, let's see a few team trainings. Let's see what's going on. And if I like it, I'll stay. If I don't, then, I'll be done with it. And I went down there, probably my second, I was like a junior, I believe. I went down there my second year, and I watched volleyball, and I immediately fell in love with it. He was there. The team was there. There was another kid that I became very good friends with eventually, just the camaraderie and the, just like the atmosphere, the emotions coming out of everybody. Like our school, we had what was called the dungeon. It was literally a basement in a gymnasium, and it was built in like 1890 in the middle of Brooklyn. And it was the old like room where the actresses would get ready. So it wasn't a weight room. It's not up to code on anything. I'm pretty sure there was asbestos and black mold and God knows what else. It literally looked like the entrance to a mine in California. And that's where I learned, but it just had that atmosphere. So I started getting involved in that stuff. And eventually, funny story, I had to take taping class for athletic training. And I had the pleasure of getting some kid that I don't think he ever washed his feet. And he pops his feet on the table and it's covered in dirt and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I'm out. I'm not taping feet no more. I hate this. This is disgusting. Plus, I had a wonderful person in the lab that would give me crap for the creases in my tape. And not to say anything about athletic training. I think they're amazing and I love everything they do. But just those things, I was like, I don't want to do this. And I went into strength conditioning. And, the guy that I was there, he actually ran in the Olympics for Jamaica in 2004. His name is Richard James. He was at LIU and now he's at Poly Prep in Brooklyn. And he just let me go. He threw me in the fire and poured gasoline on me. And kind of his teaching style was, throw you in there. If you do good, I let you be. If you don't, I'll fix it. Actually, the way he introduced me to his program is I showed up a few times at 5 a.m. and he wasn't there. He'd show up at 7:30 and I'd be sitting outside the weight room like a homeless person. And then when we went there one day, we had a baseball team. He actually sent me a workout and I arrived at 6 o'clock in the morning and he calls me and he says, hey, I'm not going to make it. It's on you. And the way things were structured, we had a weight room in the basement. Our athletic field was across campus on the field. So I had to plan out all the equipment I had to look at this piece of paper with all these exercises on it. I had to analyze what equipment I needed. I had to send all the baseball players into the weight room to carry dumbbells and kettlebells and everything out on the field. And I had to set up this circuit for 30 people. And as I did that, he showed up about halfway through and he said, how'd he do? And they said, good. And he said, yeah, the way our field is set up, our basketball arena overlooks the field. There's a big piece of glass and it's 5 floors. He was sitting in there literally watching me struggle through this thing and put the kids through there. But then ever since then, I was on his hip every day. I learned everything I could and eventually spending more and more time with him. I just kind of fell in love with everything. He let me, I was pretty much his assistant. And then I just started going around to other colleges. I got that opportunity to go to TCU and then I became a graduate assistant. So he's a huge mentorship for me. And then when I went to Texas, Zach was instrumental because when I came back, I decided I was going to do baseball. And when I was at TCU, the way he taught, just the way he was, and just the things that he said still kind of, resonate with me today. He sat me down and he said, look, I understand we got this big, nice, weight room with all this stuff and you can't do a lot of this stuff because you don't have the equipment. And he would sit down with me and we would go over all the equipment that I had to my availability. And he told me how I could execute the kind of the things that he was doing while just with the equipment that I had. He also was a big proponent in, I would write programs based on what I did at LIU. And he would, sat me down and was like, look, you don't have to write programs just because of what you just did, right? Make sure you believe in everything you're doing. Make sure everything makes sense and make sure that you're behind it 110% in order to do that. So I would have to say just the two of them, plus the teachers at school, really just helped shape my strength and conditioning journey.
Gotcha.
That's
well,
awesome.
Fun fact about Sam, he's an athletic trainer. He loves taping feet, I've heard. He's a big athletic trainer.
Hey, listen, my roommate worked for the NBA. It was all right. We actually met because I made him mad.
Me and Marsh had to get him out of the athletic training room. He loved it so much. We had to get his skinny ass in the weight room.
That's how we met. Me and Aaron were the strength coaches, and Sam was the ATC.
Yes. Yes.
No, no, not anymore. Not an athletic trainer anymore. No, that's
Hey, look,
I,
going
I
back on it, I should have stayed in that and then been done and then did the strength coach route because the business opportunities would have been bigger.
yeah. I my whole deal with athletic training was I learned that I didn't want to be or do anything with athletic training when I was, I think, my going into my senior year of college. So I was already in too deep. So I was like, well, I want to be a strength coach anyway. I might as well just finish this up. Maybe I'll get the certification. And then it just happened like where the three of us met. The head strength coach made a deal with the athletic trainer and said, well, if Sam can pass his BOC and get be a certified athletic trainer, then we'll give him a GA spot. So I took the test and passed it, and then that was basically what let me hang out for another couple of years there, and then immediately just let it go.
Awesome. Well, I think, because I've dealt with a lot, different in different places. I think it's nothing, I think it's all about which ones you work with, because in my experience, you run into ones like my beginning story. A lot of the ones that worked there weren't up to par. They were not very good. And I just saw it as an argument. I'd go in there and say, okay, so-and-so has a strained ACL, right? What can they do? Oh, well, we want them to keep their braces on all the time and walk around like they're, in armor, and that constant back and forth. But then I also have people like I have a friend in Long Island that was on my pod, and he's amazing. I mean, I worked with him. He played lacrosse. He's amazing. He's an advocate for ATs about money and like all the things to do. And then I had another one in the minor leagues from Japan who spoke 3 languages, and he was amazing. So I think that one of those things, that constant battle between us, because they used to be the same thing, with all of them. I think it's just all about, the ones that you meet. Like I said, my roommate works, he's an amazing athletic trainer. So I think it's just wherever the school of fact comes, I think it's wherever they come from is better. Because even at TCU, the trainers were awesome. I think I ended up with like a bad deal because mine were always very way conservative and they were like the end all be all. So I think that's where a lot of that comes from. If everybody just met ones that understood both sides, then I think we'd be in a better spot.
Oh, absolutely. And it's crazy how closely they can tie into each other, but there's some sort of like hard separation that happens somewhere down the line where it's just kind of like, nope, you can't do this because you're like on this side, or you can't do this because you're doing over there. When it's like, okay, well, if an athlete comes in, we can say like, what were you doing down like with the athletic trainer? Well, okay, maybe just like a little step, like, or something on even ground, or what can they do that's like the same as the rehab or something like it's definitely who you are around for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to, the sports background's big because, you get a lot that haven't experienced a lot of that stuff. And I'm not saying that they need to play sports, but a lot of them don't work out, or they're not involved as much as you are, and they don't understand things. And then, the reaction is to just say no. And I think, the ones that are, the ones you can have conversations with, the ones that do work out and move around, the ones that kind of understand our office or place of business, it's a lot easier to get things through. I think the ones you run into problems are the ones that are book smart and they're amazing at that stuff. But if they don't work out, they never played athletics, and they're over here trying to argue with me because in anatomy, this happens with this, and I always think it's interesting. Anatomy or the precursors, if you will, for injury, right? They change all the time, and it always gets more extreme and never goes backwards, right? Nobody comes out and was like, oh, no, you can't stand up really fast. That's terrible. It's, oh, if you stand up really faster with weights, it works, right? Or I don't know if you guys know the knees over toes guy. I kind of converse with him a little bit, and I follow him. He teaches squatting with your heel off the ground, and the further your knee can go over your toe with your heel on the ground, the healthier your knees are and the less susceptible you are to ACL injuries. And it's wild, but I actually have done it, and it works phenomenally. So just to that point, it's always hard to, argue with them when they're always, they're kind of staying back a little bit when everything changes all the time, and it usually changes in the other direction.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it is like a lot of the, well, at least some of the problems that like I have had to kind of overcome with that is like, especially having that athletic training background and having like my bachelor's in athletic training and stuff, and then moving on with strength and conditioning as a coach. And then you have athletes that come in and they have like their ankles taped every single day, or they, it's a lot. The brace stuff is huge too, because it's like, how are we going to, the goal is to try to get you out of that. The goal is to try to like make you strong enough and get your body to the point where it can do everything on its own. And so it's like, it's kind of tough being able to have to try to work through that. And then, at least when I learned in school, it was more of like, nope, absolutely, just play it safe. Whatever you can do at any possible opportunity, just play it safe. If they have to be in a brace for 4 weeks, keep them in it for 7 or something like that. So I was like, there's some things that I've kind of like looked back on after I've learned a little bit more to be able to be like, oh, well, maybe this or that, but it's definitely different with more people who have different experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you could just look at it for the injuries, right? How many people have torn the ACL squatting? 0, right? I mean, in a closed environment, you can't hurt people. If you do, you're insane. I mean, honestly, if you have somebody with ACL stuff and you re-tear it, then, we should have a problem anyway in there. So yeah, I think it's all about that experience, and I think, I've talked about this a lot, that camaraderie needs to change. All the camaraderie needs to change. If we could just have good relationships with the physical therapists, the ATs and everybody, everything would be better. The athletes would be better. We would be better. We'd be less stressed out. And then we wouldn't have to change anything, right? I could say, this is what I want to do. Okay. Well, what do you want to do? Well, you want to prevent them from getting hurt. Okay. Well, I'm going to do that, right? I'm not going to try to do things to make them hurt. And I'm not going to do things just to prove a point. But, let's look at the scientific stuff. As long as it's, if you said, hey, look, I don't want him jumping because he tore his ACL, and judging by science, you can't take ground reaction force to, let's just say 3 weeks, just throw a number out there. Then we'll wait that long because you're on the medical side. But it's the stuff like you said, oh, well, they're good after 4 weeks. That's nice. We're going to keep them in there for 10. And then you're, it's a disaster. I mean, you look at sports stuff. Look at the Mets with Ike Davis, classic story. The guy sprains his ankle, then they put a bunch of holes in it, and then they take him on a plane. Long story short, he sprained his ankle, and then his foot was in a cast for like 3 months, and his season ended, and I think it ruined his career just by, conservative.
Right. Yeah, where it's almost just being able to blend the two together a little bit more, having those conversations and being able to build the relationship between the two departments, regardless of where you are. I'm sure it's just like, would just like put everyone else at a whole new level.
Yep, exactly.
Crazy part is like we all want the same thing for the athlete, want him to be the best, and then everyone's going about it which way. Could you guys not hear me again?
Dude, so type choppy. It in the thing. Type it in, and what something me or Sam will just read it.
Put it in the chat.
Jeez, man.
No, we're definitely about a year. Marshall will get done typing.
Yeah. Do you do like an old man, one finger at a time, like my grandpa? Don't call me. Just type it in the thing, dude. What?
All I was saying is that we all go about it in different ways, but all we want is an athlete to get better.
Going through tunnel.
That is so cool.
Sounds like you're in a submarine. Sounds like he's in a submarine.
He said we all want I don't know if this is what he said. I don't really pay attention to him. He said we all want the best for the athlete, but yet we go different routes. Is that right? Just shake. I can't even see him, so I can't even tell him to shake his head.
Blink your eyes twice if he's right.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, the crazy, like, different routes thing is like, I think the way that a lot of people look at it is like, athletic training may be more conservative a little bit. They want to be more on the safe side, while a lot of strength and conditioning coaches may at least like have the appearance of being more aggressive with training and with development and everything, while and of course those two are going to clash if you're going to say, well, it either has to be one or the other instead of the blend. But
absolutely, it's a portrayal. I put up the other day the thing in draft day with the strength coach. It drives me insane. We get one chance in Hollywood, and the guy's screaming at the top of his lungs about the quarterback squat numbers, and I'm like, see, this is why everybody thinks we're barbarians.
No, yeah. Or I think the ESPN thing of get back coaches.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I I talked to a guy in the NFL once, and he said, "Look, man, you just hang out on the plane, you eat as much food as you want, and then you walk around the sidelines and try not to throw up." So we don't really do. There's not a lot there. Like,
that was my favorite thing. When the past couple of years when I traveled with SIU, our head guy, me, he would always like, dude, I'm gonna have to. If we had like a freshman heated game, where he's like, you know what, next time we'll make you sit by Aaron. Aaron's gonna show you how to eat. Aaron's gonna make your plates, because that was like my favorite thing. Just get like 2 or 3 plates and just eat as much as I could. Get free food. Travel. After I get done, they would be like, okay, we have a snack in an hour. Yeah, I'm down for that. Well, they'd be like, okay. Oh, because they always had water or Gatorade, so I'd be grabbing a Gatorade, grabbing a Gatorade water. Like by the end of the trip, I had like 30 Gatorades in my bag, so I could have 30 training sessions with a Gatorade.
Oh yeah, at TCU, the kids used to come to the weight room and ask them for protein, and they'd hand them one of those big, giant, huge jugs and be like, "Here, take this back to your room and take 2 scoops of this every day." And I'm like,
I could only imagine if I've watched Alan Bishop with whenever he posts like the Houston basketball training table. It's like, if I could eat like that, oh my gosh! And I'm sure the athletes get that as many as they want, as many times as they want throughout the day. I'm sure.
Coastal has a separate cafeteria for all their
That's
athletes.
Unreal. I remember
their stuff is amazing. We went there and played them on ESPN a few years ago and got destroyed. But the stuff I was like, this is wild. The field is the nicest baseball field I've ever seen.
Well,
you win a national championship, and they just
toss it all at you. Yeah, when I was interning at the University of Minnesota, it was like every morning to get into one of the buildings, I had to walk past the football team having their breakfast, and they had it catered from a small local place that had the best breakfast around. And it was like every morning, it was like the owner was there, and it was like buffet style, so everyone had like 3 to 5 plates, and like I had to just walk past with all the other interns and just try to ignore it. I wasn't allowed.
Hey guys, nice to meet you. How you doing?
In the big leagues, the food is unbelievable. The stuff that they eat is not even. They have sous chefs, they have steak, they have shrimp. It's unbelievable. You walk into a thing, it's a kitchen. It's like going into a Stop and Shop, but everything is free and cooked.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's like the hockey guys up there were like their locker room and their like hangout area was like, it was nicer than anywhere else I had ever been. It was like they had like a kitchen with like theater seats and like 8 TVs on the wall. They just like they could just grab a snack, hang out, watch movies, play video games, do whatever they wanted. And then it was like the weight room was like just down the hallway. The rink was just out the door. So it was like they almost didn't have to leave the arena.
Yeah, the big schools it makes you feel bad when you get there initially. You're like, this is terrible. Like, what am I doing? Like, this is what people actually do. And I come from, I had 4 squat racks. So he's like, how many squat racks you have? I'm like, 4. I was like, yeah, I know, you have 50. Yeah, we have 4. And we have 1 free motion machine and 1 rack of dumbbells and the stuff is unbelievable.
Sam, has Joe, the other Joe who we had on last episode, has Joe ever told you about the ISO 30s when we were at Buffalo?
No.
So Marshall's getting back on. He doesn't care because he doesn't train, so he wouldn't care about this. So at the time when me and Joe were interns at Buffalo, the head guy before the interim, Don, like ordered like, I don't even know how many cases, but is like ISO 30. So it's like 30 grams of protein, probably like in like a bottle is like fruit punch and like green apple.
Oh, the clear ones, they're just disgusting.
Yeah. Literally, I'm not lying. If I had to bet over 100 cases of 12 or like 24 pack were expiring within the month. So me and Joe, we made it our mission to drink as many of those a day. And they give you the worst shit. Like literally, I think I took 10 boxes home like after they were expired, and I had to like throw like 8 of them away because I'm like, I can't drink them all. But oh my God, I can't even.
Those are gross on their own.
Yeah, and we just chugged them. Before we trained, chugged one. After we trained, chugged one. It's awful. I can't even invite Mello back in. But my buddy who's the assistant at SIU, he said at Mizzou, because he was there when Mizzou was like really good. They said they had their own cafeteria for all their athletes. They could just walk in. Either they could eat there and all you can eat, or they could just fill a big box of food. Just unreal.
I got yelled at in the big leagues for eating too much food. Because we have, on the minor league side, we have cafeteria food. So they bring us, so every strength coach goes over to the other side during spring training, and you work with the big leagues and you travel with them. And when I went there, they had bacon, they had real bagels, because in Florida, they don't know how to make anything. The food's disgusting. The bagels are gross, and the water, I just had to mix it with Gatorade. It was so disgusting. But we get there, and they had bagels from New York. So I'm like stockpiling stuff in my locker, and I got yelled at. Like the strength coach sat me down and was like, hey, maybe next time when you come up here, don't eat so much food. I'm like, dude, I've been eating cafeteria middle school food for the last 3 months. I was like, they have 4 types of bacon in here. Like, I'm going to eat this food. Oh, it was a big, huge deal. I went in there because the staff makes your lunch when you travel. And I came in there and the lady goes, you like your lunch? Just steal somebody else's? And I'm like, why are you getting angry at me? It's food.
You're like, maybe give me a little bit more next time.
No, the food on the other side was disgusting. It was like low-level elementary school food. And then on the other side, it was like catered and actually tastes like food. So there's always, the difference is crazy. Like I said, it's always, that's one of the things that like separates, I think in the minor leagues, the reason why everything is so hard a lot is because the guys in minor leagues, A, there's a lot more teams, but B, like the difference in what they go through is night and day. The big leaguers, not that they don't deserve it, but they don't practice for as long. The food, all the stuff, like everything is just really laid back and chill. And on the other side, they practice for 15 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're riding a bus instead of taking the plane.
Oh, the buses.
Stuff like
God.
that.
I can't take a bus anymore. And every time I go to a hotel room, it'd be like next to the beach when I was younger, it'd make me happy. Now it just reminds me of minor leagues because we stayed in some places. But Batavia, real nice area in upstate New York. If you have a chance to go there. They don't have Ubers. They didn't have Ubers when I was there. We tried to call an Uber and it said this isn't available yet. I was like, that's great.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we've been to some places. Oh my God.
See, whenever I travel, Marshall, we're talking about food. You're small and weak, so you can't talk. Go ahead, Mello, if we can hear you. What was your question?
Can you guys hear me? I don't know. I just restarted everything.
It's a little better. No, your video still sucks.
The video is not good still. Your voice was better.
You can hear me.
Oh.
Jesus, just type it in.
It's like Apollo 13.
Yeah. There's a chat, Marshall. There's a chat on the right side of the screen.
Write it down in marker and hold it up to the screen, and then make a noise, and then we'll.
And then we'll only see that one question for the next 20 minutes. Still 3.
Sam, he wants me to say fuck you, Sam. Say it, Aaron. Do it.
I'm reading the chat, Marshall.
You can't put it on YouTube for kids now. You said you cursed.
Yeah, this is inappropriate, Mello. We're a family-friendly Christian podcast. We came from Ella Christian High School. You should know this. He said stop. This is, this is why we can't take him anywhere. This is why we don't have friends. People just feel bad for us because like, yeah, this is our friend Marshall. Yeah. He's like that little brother, except he's like 30 years older than all of us.
He's the one still using dial-up.
I know. It's gross. It is just gross. We have to deal with him. And he's the one. All right. He's not talking anymore. I mean, I don't really have any more questions. Sam, do you have any other questions for Joe?
I think I'm good for now.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot of good questions and a lot of good conversation right there.
Yeah, I did. I feel like my favorite thing is just having people on and just telling the stories. Because I feel like that's my favorite thing is telling stories of. Yeah, we used to have big bench and strongman Saturdays, and we used to eat a bunch of food after. And I was like, back in Iowa, I feel like that's our I'll go ahead. I guess I do have one last question. I'm going to regret it because I have about 15 books what I haven't read, and I don't need to get any more. But go ahead, give me not even strength and conditioning. You can give me a strength and conditioning, but go ahead and give me top 2 or 3 books, Joe.
Top 2 or 3 books. Well, I think the Can't Hurt Me book by David Goggins is phenomenal. I read it. He's crazy. I mean, he's probably the craziest person who's ever lived. But just the way I've read it twice. It's a great book. Like I said, for anybody that out there listening, it's a book you can read all the time. It doesn't really like set a standard and then you don't use it anymore, right? It's always good to read that and to listen to him because he kind of always has something to say about every situation because very basic. If something bad happens, figure it out. Second, probably Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I'm a big Jordan Peterson guy. I listen to him all the time, and I've listened to YouTube's, but I read the book, and the rules are great, and it's a good way to just kind of get away from the strength and conditioning stuff. I think that's important too. And the third one, I think I'd go between, The Art of War or The Richest Man in Babylon, just basic books that teach, very general skills. I think for me, the theme is always trying to expand my mind in a different way and not necessarily reading strength conditioning books. I think the Charlie Francis stuff and all the techniques, the overspeed, the Louie stuff is great if you're listening and looking for stuff to learn. But once you have that base, I think it's important to learn how to think, how to read people, and kind of how to expand your mind every day so that you can take the knowledge that you get from those other books and you can really help kind of put it upon your athletes to teach them and really kind of change their lives as we coach them.
Hands down. I appreciate you having on the podcast since Mello can't do the ending since he really screwed the pooch there. So go ahead, give out your Instagram, Twitter. Where can people find you?
Sure. My Instagram is strength_coach_experience. Like I said, my podcast, I have a new episode every Monday, kind of, like this, just chopping it up with different strength coaches and getting their stories and where they came from. And also I'm on LinkedIn, Joe Lego. After listening, it's exactly how it's spelled. No double G's and no craziness. And that's it, right? Instagram, direct message and stuff. I'm usually pretty good on there. Like everybody else, I'm on there every day, checking for my likes and all that stuff. So, if you have any questions, just reach out to there.
Awesome.
Gotcha. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't know what Mello says at ending, and I probably didn't like what he said. So, Sam, this is going to be the new ending. All right?
Stop.
I don't know how to stop recording.